video and all other videos on this channel are for entertainment purposes only. The content of this video and all other videos on this channel are the opinions of the creator only and do not constitute legal, trading, investment, or financial advice of any kind. Investing carries a high level of risk and the majority of retail clients lose money. Do not invest any capital unless you understand the risks and you are prepared to lose it all. Alright, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and today I've got quite a mixed bag for you guys. So we're going to talk a little bit about some FUD that I believe is out there at the moment, quantum computing. We're also going to point at some charts and take a look at what I expect to see for Bitcoin. Today is also CPI, so I'm going to briefly touch on that. And I want to point at something for MicroStrategy, which I've been trolling them a lot lately, but there is one final chance for the bulls here. So I want to talk about that in the interest of being totally objective. And there's probably a couple other things in here which I've forgotten. So strap in, today should be a good one. First of all, the memes continue to write themselves, okay? The Bank of England is going to hide the identities of any pension funds, insurers, or hedge funds that are bailed out under a new financial stability tool. And the reason I bring this up, the reason I think this is so funny, is the UK is supposed to be a developed economy. It is supposed to be one of the largest powers on the globe. And yet it consistently behaves like a developing economy. It consistently has all the hallmarks of an emerging market. And this is not the first time I've brought this up. I remember going back to September a couple of years ago when in the middle of a rate hiking cycle, the UK Bank of England had to print money in the middle of that hiking cycle in order to bail out the pension funds because they got margin called, right? And again, this is all the things you would expect to see from a developing economy or an emerging market. So once again, I point at this stuff and just say the memes continue to write themselves. The next thing I wanted to touch on briefly is Consumer Price Index. The CPI is due today. Ordinarily, I stream CPI, we take a look at it, but I'm actually taking the wife out today, so I'm not going to be paying attention. As ever, I'll say the same things I always do, and that is expect chop volatility in games, expect the true direction not to be revealed until Thursday or perhaps even Friday, and as always with CPI week, it is the weekly closes that I am interested in. It's the weekly closes I'll consider to be significant. And of course, as always, we will come back and assess the data tomorrow, and then we'll do a bit more of a deep dive on it over the weekend. One last thing I want to point out about CPI is if we don't close the week green this week, okay, then I really think we have to put some more serious downside scenarios on the table. So close the week green, and I'm happy to say, okay, we remain long and strong and cautiously optimistic. And if, again, we close red this week, then I really do think we have to be open to put in some more serious downside scenarios on the table. It doesn't necessarily mean we have to be calling tops immediately or anything like that, or Bitcoin back to some silly low numbers. It just means if we can't close green this week, we do have to put downside scenarios on the table so that we don't get blindsided by them. This print's going to be super interesting because Trueflation currently has us bottomed for inflation, 2.84%. So it's going to be really interesting for me to see if it comes in line with expectations, hotter or colder. As ever, I don't really care what happens to the price action today. Like I said a million times, Thursday and Friday is where the focus will be for me. So that print is due out at 1:30 UK time, and we are expecting headline year-over-year CPI to come in at around 2.7% according to the forecast. The next thing I wanted to bring up is I'm seeing this do the rounds again. Quantum computing is posing a threat to Bitcoin. Quantum computers are soon going to break all of crypto. So I thought I'd just briefly touch on this and point out a few things. First of all, okay, quantum computing FUD for Bitcoin is almost as old as Bitcoin, as you can see here. Okay, the first time this was brought up was 2010. So this is all kind of just being recycled as it does over and over again. We also see recycling of Tether FUD. We see recycling of many different types of things in this space, simply because most people come into this space, lose all their money and leave permanently, and then in come newer investors, and the cycle repeats, okay? So they can get away with recycling these kind of things because remember, your average trader or investor has a career expectancy of less than 3 years. The second thing I wanted to touch on with this, SHA-256, which is of course the secure hashing algorithm that Bitcoin uses to secure the network. That same algorithm is also used to protect nuclear facilities, nuclear launch codes, military databases, the legacy financial system. So if SHA-256 can be broken by quantum computers, breaking the private keys is honestly going to be the lowest of our problems. The next thing to point out, okay, is this most recent development with Google's Willow Quantum is using a computer with 105 qubits, okay, quantum bits. And we would need over 1 million qubits to actually break elliptic curve digital signature algorithm 256. And to break SHA-256 is even tougher. So this really isn't a threat anytime in the near future. We can talk briefly about Moore's law, okay, which there's a misnomer in that computers get roughly twice as good every 2 years. However, what Moore's law actually says is the number of transistors you can fit on a chip doubles every couple of years. It doesn't really apply to quantum computing because there aren't really transistors. Scaling of quantum computers is much harder, okay? It doesn't really fit Moore's law. But even if we said, okay, let's just be really generous here and assume they can double the amount of qubits every 2 years, you can see that we're a long way off going from 105 to 1 million qubits. It's also worth pointing out, I think, for anyone that's concerned about this, that the devs have been working on quantum resistant ideas, options. Vitalik is known to have been talking about what he calls a recovery fork on the Ethereum network, just in case, okay, someone develops a quantum computer and can attack it and steal some funds. So it would mean very few people end up actually losing their money. And for me, at least, the way I like to think about this is if quantum computers can break crypto, they can also break legacy financial systems, the military stuff. And if I was to ask you the question, who do you think is better or more able to pivot, to adapt to this kind of attack? Do you think it's the crypto industry, the devs that work on Bitcoin and Ethereum, that kind of thing? Do you think they're more able to pivot on a dime and be able to react to quantum computers? Or do you think the legacy financial system is going to be lightning quick to react to this? Because if I had to place a bet, I would imagine the crypto industry is going to be much faster to react and deal with anything like this should it occur. And so overall, I really don't think this is a problem. Feel free to do your own research. Feel free to disagree. And for a bit of bonus content here, because I know a lot of you like it when I talk about potentially living in a simulation. For anyone that doesn't know, I am pretty convinced we live in a simulation. I first came to this conclusion when I was doing my degree at university and I was doing a lot of modules on quantum mechanics and figuring out how electrons behave. And this whole quantum computer system is another piece of evidence, for me at least, that makes me think we do live in some kind of simulated holography. The reason I'm saying this is when you suspend these qubits in a state of quantum superposition, which is required for these qubits to exist in both 0 and 1 and both at the same time, these quantum computers only work if you isolate them from consciousness. The people that work on quantum computers have to spend a great deal of their time making sure consciousness cannot observe the quantum computer because consciousness itself fixes the state of the particles and interferes with the computing, which also kind of aligns with the idea that the double slit experiment in quantum mechanics, whereby we can see light observed as a wave or a particle depending on who is paying attention to it. And so I still maintain that consciousness gives rise to things existing in the first place. If a tree falls in a forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? And the answer is, if there's no one there to see it and observe it, if there is no units of consciousness to witness the tree fall, then the tree does not exist at all. So I think that's enough waffle on quantum mechanics for one morning. Now, I'm going to call the whole quantum computing thing FUD, okay? Because as I've said, I think I've made a pretty good case that Bitcoin and crypto is in no real threat from quantum computing at this moment in time, at least, or for the foreseeable future. And at the same time that is circulating, we are seeing Microsoft shareholders just voted against adding Bitcoin to their corporate treasury. Okay, so again, there's another piece of information that some market participants will use to dump their Bitcoin. And all of this has just occurred against a backdrop of the biggest liquidation event, not in 2 years, but in 3 years. It's also the second biggest liquidation event in history, and the last biggest liquidation event that we saw happened back in September of 2021. September 2021 was the largest liquidation event in history at the time, and Bitcoin topped just 2 months later. So yesterday we had the largest liquidation event ever. Does that mean the top is just 2 months away? I will let you decide. So continuing to jump around here, as I said, I've been quite vocal in trolling MicroStrategy. I really believe the chart is in a very sorry state at the moment. But there is possibly one thing that could save this chart, okay? There is one thing that could possibly save the share price. On a balance of probabilities, I don't think it's likely. But MicroStrategy is just about to be added to the NASDAQ 100 index, which means it will get a bunch of passive inflows from the likes of the QQQ ETF. Now, on a balance of probabilities, I still maintain this looks an awful lot like a chart that has completely topped and has no hope of recovering the high. Also, if we use the fractal from the prior cycle's bull run for MicroStrategy, you can see it looks exactly like what a bull market looks like once it's topped and starting to break down. So I know there's a whole heap of people out there that love to tell you, Camel, you don't understand what you're talking about. Maybe that's true. Okay, but remember, I am not a fundamental analyst. I do not spend any time thinking about the narrative. I simply look at the charts, and when the charts look like this and break down, that tells me with at least an 85% probability that is going to remain the high. Now, as always, it's a market. Anything and everything is on the table. If you are bullish MicroStrategy here, you have one final hope, and that is that this chart morphs into some kind of look and prints a new high. If it does not print a new high, okay, then what it will do is print a lower high somewhere in here, of course, and then it's going to break down again. And at this point, I go from being 85% confident that's the high to 100% confident that's the high. If you've been holding on for dear life here because you're super bought into the narrative and you really believe this asset's going to print new highs, and instead of printing a new high, what it does is something like this and then breaks down, is, in my humble opinion, that is your final chance to exit the market before we begin to target that hyperwave target down at $35. So if indeed this is not just a nothing burger, if indeed this is going to drive serious capital into the MicroStrategy share price and resolve to new highs, then you must see this thing print a new high in the not too distant future. Anything other than a new high, any kind of lower high, whether it looks like this, like that fractal suggested, whether it pops up a little bit and prints a lower high, or even a double top, okay, anything other than a new high. And this market has topped. So I've been as objective as I possibly can. You know my bias, and my bias is based solely on the charts. That's all charting is. It's a probabilistic outcome that we can build a trade thesis around. I have seen this exact structure many, many times. I've traded through many, many parabolas, and I have never seen one resolve to a new high out of here. So there's a first time for everything. Again, I'm not ready to say 100% confident that this is topped yet, but I am 85% confident. And once more, if it breaks down from this third angle here, then I become 100% confident. And as the members know, that is what I am deeming the highest probability short setup for MicroStrategy, which will look something like this. So I've been as nice as I possibly can after trolling these bulls ruthlessly for some time now. Again, this is the fractal that I think we should all be paying attention to. Of course, fractals are not to be traded from. They're only really useful for YouTubers to show people what they're looking at, rather than just draw a yellow squiggle. But if price starts to morph into anything resembling this at all, then I think we've got serious concerns for the wider market as well, because this has led on the way up and will be leading on the way down. So as ever, okay, don't make it personal. Just be open to all possible outcomes. For Bitcoin, okay, it looks a lot to me like we are in this range right here, just like we saw from back here, and we're about to explode higher. That would make a lot of sense to me. Notice that's 170k by early next year, okay? I don't think anyone would be complaining with that. And another awesome chart here from Tony. Notice we've got this fractalization, blue, 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 green, 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 then wedge, expanding, broadening, wedge, looking for an expanding, broadening wedge before yellow, which we saw here, here, and here, and then up into a final high in that fifth wave. Once again, showing a lot of confluence for that 150 to 180k region by early next year at the latest. So pretty wild times. Let's see if we can get it, something like this, and then off we go. And there is supporting evidence that we're nowhere near a top yet, so I'm going to show you that now. The on-chain cycle tops, okay, are no way close to the levels that we saw previously, telling us again to be expecting a higher Bitcoin price. The cycle dashboard, which integrates many metrics, very suppressed relative to the prior levels we saw close to major tops, again tells us to keep an open mind about seeing expansion from both of these. Bitcoin's value captured heat map, okay, shows again not anywhere close to the red zone like we saw with prior tops. There's plenty of space yet for us to see another squeeze to the upside. So there's probably still plenty of space. And for me and the long-time Camel Crew, okay, you know that we've been eyeing up this Bitcoin priced in gold. Notice how it is getting ready to make that all-time high break into price discovery, and I've long been hoping to see 100 ounces. Now, I was thinking about this because by Q1 of next year, I expect to see around $3,000 gold, which means if we can get up to around 65 in the Bitcoin to gold ratio with a price of $3,000 gold, 65 times $3,000 gold would give us around 195k for the top of Bitcoin. So that'd be pretty wild. Needless to say, if we did make it all the way up to 100, that would give us $300,000 Bitcoin. And whilst you may well think that's impossible, take a look at this, because we're well on our way to completing this parabolic move into that fifth. If we were to do this in ultra sharp and quick fashion, we could perhaps even see 250k by the end of this year. But if we were to take even more time to do this, okay, it would still give us a top of around 250 to 300k before March of 2025. And it would just be in line with this thing right here repeating. So of course, invalidation for this is any kind of sideways chop, any kind of breakdown, okay? But if we continue to squeeze up very aggressively, then I would just suggest to you to be open to all possible outcomes, okay? It seems insane, but $1,000 once seemed insane, $10,000, $20,000, all of these levels seemed insane at one point. And something like this would also give us the space to have a nasty 70-ish plus % bear market and not have to come back into this kind of minor break-even price. So it'll be interesting to see if we can get that. Moving into the charts, okay, it looks to me like indeed we've got a daily cycle low confirmed now for the Dixie. So we'll see if this can continue to follow through. We'll see what the inflation print is, and then we'll come back and check in on all of that stuff as of tomorrow. We continue to still tell that to the bond market, and it's been a little while since I checked the rate cut probabilities, but as you can see, 86% in favor of seeing a cut. Now, this cut may well impact the yield curve to the point at which we have to start being really cautious about tops coming in. We'll see how that goes. Again, we'll deal with all this as it comes. For Bitcoin, still following my arbitrary yellow squiggle, and this fractal still looks very much in play, so not much to say about that. As I keep saying over and over again, we will let the market prove to us what it wants to do and examine the weekly closes. Gold has staged a breakout for now, but it's still kind of early in this cycle. It doesn't really make sense from a cycle perspective. This breakout is not to be trusted because it does not have the cycle backing behind it. Unless we start to print higher highs, okay, then we can confirm we've got a weekly cycle low in already. But on a balance of probabilities, I still maintain that this probably has one final flush or at least more sideways grinding to do first. So I'm keeping a close eye on that. Even if we're slightly late to react, we're still, in the scheme of things, going to be able to get in with a tight stop and be able to catch the last piece of upside move left in gold. But if you know where to look, such as silver, okay, silver is rejecting at resistance at the moment following the yellow squiggle. The mining ETFs as well, looking lackluster, looking to me at least like they have now built out the structure to set, ready to confirm the weekly cycle low on a trend line break. Kind of the same with the junior miners. I half expect this thing to roll over from here, head down into a weekly cycle low and confirm it for trend line break. And you can see the silver junior miners as well, kind of breaking out, right? But a little lackluster. Wouldn't surprise me if we get one more final rollover. We can set that as our area on the chart to confirm we've got a cycle low. So I don't really believe this move from gold just yet. As ever, open to being proven wrong by the market, but I think because we're in a CPI week, we're going to continue to see chop and volatility in games. Speaking of volatility, we are still long the VIX, and the members know the plan for that. If you're a member, level 3 member, and you don't know the plan, I posted in the community tab yesterday, so you can go and check that out. The Russell 2K is just a few hundred points now from my long-term target of 2,700. So hopefully this thing can continue to push up, and hopefully we don't have to lock in some profit on the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, and the Dow. As ever, okay, I'm going to kind of bow out of the way during the CPI price day because there's always those chop and games and volatility. But by the end of the week, if we haven't closed green, I would imagine I would have been locking down some gains across the board. So that's it from me. I hope you have a fantastic day. We'll be back tomorrow as always to examine the CPI. Other than that, I hope you're doing well in life. Until next time, take care from me. All the best. Cheers. Bye.
Camel Finance, he's the man to see, rocking the markets with his contrarian spree. Trades like a pro, no fear, no shame, sticking to his guns in his money game. He's a badass, oh yes indeed. Camel Finance got the markets key, taking us normies on a bump.